How are you?
I am well, and I am excited for the opportunity to be able to have Judy Bass with us today. So I actually met Judy in 2006 when I moved to a school just outside of Washington, D.C. And Judy is widely known across that community for her support of kids with learning difference, both in terms of doing school placements, but we were just catching up a little, doing tutoring, just strategies. She is a wealth of information, and we are so fortunate to have her expertise with us today. Judy has actually worked with numerous of our families over the years since I've arrived. She's, I don't know, gosh, how many years have you been doing this for us?
I think since your first was 7.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, this is an opportunity for you all. Please, this is interactive. Judy's got a ton of information to share, but it's also about answering your questions. So please do jump in or raise your hand on the screen if there's something, or I will certainly monitor the chat for questions as well. So with that, you're not here to hear this, Judy. I'm going to turn it over to the other Judy.
Thank you so much, Judy. I appreciate that introduction. And I would like to add, if you have questions that you want to put in the chat, that you can wait till the end if you don't want to have them answered right away, so you don't forget them, put them in the chat. And so you have them in your head. Thank you all for inviting me. And I do college planning for students with all kinds of learning issues. I also do post-secondary placements for students who might not be going to college. And what I'd like to talk with you about today is all of those options and how we can, let's see why my screen is not moving. There we go. And how we can move forward after high school. There are different ways to do that. Whether your child is college bound or not college bound, there are lots and lots of paths to independence. And so these are some of the things we're going to talk about today. What is college readiness? What are some of those alternative paths? How do we evaluate colleges for their support, and some resources that can help you? Some of the things to think about are, we want to consider not just the students' academic needs, but their emotional and social needs as well when we're selecting colleges. The fit is very, very important for students who learn differently, because there are a lot of things that have to be in place for success. And the college search should be a student-driven process. So if you find that you're, sitting with your child, having your child do all the work and they're resisting, then that's something to consider, that some children aren't ready to go to college right outside of high school, and that's okay. But when they are ready, they're much more likely to follow through on applications and essays and so forth. So a number of years ago, Jeffrey Arnett, a psychologist, developed the concept of the emerging young adult. And if you recall, back when back in history, I guess, we had children and adults. And then we had children, teenagers, and adults. And now we have children, teenagers, and emerging young adults and adults. So we're creating these stages in a way people are less adult as early as they used to be. They're taking longer to get to that adult stage. So this stage of development is where a lot of your children probably are or will be. They're still figuring out who they are. They're young adults. They're not quite adolescents anymore, and they're certainly not feeling like adults. I remember my son at 25 saying to me, "I'm not a grown-up yet." I said, "You are, you have a job, you are." He goes, "But I'm not a grown-up." And in his mind, he wasn't there yet. And that's interesting. And of course, when we talk about students with ADHD, autism, There's also a prolonged or delayed adolescence. Students are often 3 to 5 years behind academically, possibly academically, but definitely socially and emotionally. Okay. So here's just a cartoon that I really like that talks about how everyone is different. There's no one way to grow. There's no one way to be. And, at CBA, everybody recognizes and accepts everyone for who they are, which is how it should be everywhere. So how can you support this transition stage? You want to foster independence in all aspects of life, thinking about what does your child need to do to be ready to leave home? It's different for everyone. Do they need to learn how to do their laundry or cook, or do they need to learn how to wake up in the morning? They need to advocate for themselves because you won't be there after high school to help intervene, and they have to learn how to talk about their needs if they need help with something. They should learn from their mistakes, and that's really hard for us as parents. I've been there myself. It's very hard to let students fail, but that's how they learn, because they have to learn that they can pick themselves up and they can continue on. And we can't rescue them always. Certainly, we don't want them to make a huge mistake. But for example, if they forget to hand in their homework and they don't get it in the next day, there should be a consequence rather than knowing, oh, my mom will bring it in for me. They need to accept that they should have remembered. And for parents, the hardest thing is learning to let go, getting to a point where you know that they need to prepare for life after high school, and you have to step back and give them that chance to practice before they leave, because it doesn't happen overnight. Think about the scaffolding that you've provided all these years. Extra help from teachers, maybe tutors in a lot of subjects, a coach for time management and organization, as parents helping with homework, with work or reminders. When your child gets to college, all that scaffolding is going to fall away. It's not going to be there anymore. And it's something that people don't realize they even have put in place because it just seamlessly works. But if there's not a strong foundation, when that scaffolding falls, the building's going to crumble. And that's why it's so important to step away and let them start to develop some of those skills. I like this one a lot because this is how we all feel as parents. We're trying to reconcile her need for independence with our ability to run her life better than she does. So again, stepping away is hard. So what is independence? What do we think of when we think of the ultimate goal for our student? Is it getting into college or a good job? Is it earning a degree? Is it learning a skill or finding a career? The ultimate goal to me is that the student should develop into an independent, resilient young adult capable of living on their own to the extent that they are able. And I think that's the goal for every parent. And if you think about that being the goal, then your paths can be very different as long as they get to the same place. So for some parents, a college degree is very important. But if the student is living at home, getting the college degree, and the parents are still helping, what you have at the end of 4 years is a student who still needs support, who doesn't have the skills for a job, but has a college degree. But the college degree is not what gets them into the world, into the work world. It's the independence and the life skills and being able to be an adult in the capacity that they need to live independently. And that's different for everyone. Not every child is going to be independent at all, and some won't be independent till much later in life. But that's the goal. So when we think of college, as I mentioned earlier, we think of the three-legged stool, or at least I think of a three-legged stool: academic ability, emotional regulation, and social skills. All three of these are equally important. And what happens if one leg of the stool is missing? Okay, there's no stability. Each of these needs to be there in equal balance for the student to be able to succeed. So you might have a student who's very capable academically, but if they don't fit socially with college-age students, that might not be the best path right away. If your child still has some emotional dysregulation, or they don't have the ability to manage some of those emotions, again, they might be great socially, they might have good academic skills, but they're not necessarily in a place where they can live independently. So think in terms of when all of those catch up. And the good thing to know is, we talk in terms a lot of asynchronous development for students who have ADHD, autism, any kind of learning differences. And what that means is you have a child who's chronologically, let's say 15. Intellectually, he might be 25 in his area of interest, and he might be able to converse with professors and all kinds of adults and have a great conversation about his topic. But socially, he likes to hang out with the 12 and 13-year-olds because that's where he's comfortable. Eventually, all three of those get to be the same. The 15-year-old gets to be 25, and the social emotional catch up somewhere between 25 and 30. And that's when all of them come together. And as I like to say, the light bulb often goes on when they realize, now I'm ready to move forward in life. I've got it. I'm now going to think first and act after, instead of the other way around. And I did notice that with my own daughter. So I can tell you at 25, it often happens where she would tell me something first, or even ask me before doing it, instead of telling me about it after the oops happened. And this way, I realized she was getting to be more mature. So when you're looking at colleges or any program after high school, you need to have documentation. And I know that at CBA, you've all got pretty current documentation that you keep up with. So depending on when that was done, colleges want to see the documentation be within 3 years of when you attend. Now, there's some flexibility there. If it's 3.5 years old, if it's almost 4 years old, my recommendation is you don't need to repeat it until you've decided where you're going to go, because some colleges will accept it, especially if you have autism and they say, well, the autism is still going to be there, and 4 years old will accept that and you don't need to redo it. However, most colleges want the WAIS, which is the adult version of the WISC. If you all know the Wechsler test for children versus for adults, that's the difference between the WISC and the WAIS. And that's the psychological piece of the testing. This one is normed for 16 and above. So colleges prefer that. But again, some colleges will accept the WISC. Then they want tests of achievement and a list of accommodations that the psychologist feels that the student would qualify for. And then the specific rationale, for example, if foreign language is going to be an issue or math is an issue, if you can have the psychologist put a specific reason in there, such as my daughter has dyslexia, or my daughter has language processing deficits, and it's very difficult for her to even hear English or pick up the sounds in English, she's not able to do a foreign language, then many colleges will offer a substitution, such as a culture course in English or a study abroad program where you're learning the language naturally or taking something culturally. And for math, it's a little bit more complicated, but it is possible. Some colleges offer what they call a quantitative requirement instead of specifically math. And what that means is math related, math or science related. So it could be a math course that's not pre-calculus, calculus, or even algebra. It could be the music of math or the math of music. It could be something to do with science that's math related. So there are a lot of ways that colleges can offer this foundation course that if you're not looking to major in a math or science, that it would suffice to have this course. So that's a way around that, to find out when you're looking, do you have a quantitative course or requirement or a specific math course requirement? So there are a lot of accommodations that can be gotten in college. And the good news is it's not hard to get an accommodation. There aren't barriers to getting them. If you need an accommodation, the college wants to provide it for you. It's not difficult. I don't know if any of you have come from public school at all before getting to CBA, but you would know then that it's very hard. You're basically battling to get what you need. College is not like that at all. If your documentation shows the need and the student can articulate the need, you have the accommodations as long as the school offers them. So these are some that I think are not often thought about in high school. Anonymous note takers. The reason I say anonymous is a true note taker accommodation is when the professor asks in the class if anyone would be willing to share their notes or take notes for the class. And that note taker then is hired. Either they get a stipend, they get paid, or they're volunteering, depending on the school. And they send their notes directly to the Learning Support Center. The students, your child and maybe others, are going to go in and either download the notes or pick up the notes physically and have those notes to supplement their own. That's an accommodation. But you have to be careful when you ask a college, do you have note takers? They often say, oh, of course. Well, what they mean is you can ask anybody in the class to take notes for you. We'll allow that. But no student's going to continuously ask a student for that favor. So that's not a true accommodation. So you have to ask it in a way that you're asking if you do this in the way that it's an accommodation. Priority registration is another example of benefit. If your child can't get up early in the morning, there are late class starts as an accommodation, but it also helps you balance your course load. Let's say, and I always recommend this, that you have a morning class and an afternoon class and consider them bookends at college. Most students won't have more than 2 classes a day. They might have Monday, Wednesday, Friday class and Tuesday, Thursday. And usually we like to recommend that you start with a reduced course load anyway. So if you're taking 12 credits, that could be 4 classes. But if you have a 10 o'clock class and a 3 o'clock class, your mind is in school mode for that whole day. From 11 o'clock when your class is over until 3 o'clock, you've got homework to do for that class. You might have studying to do, but your mind is focused on school. If you have a 10 o'clock and an 11 o'clock class, you're checking out at 12. School's over for the day. And you're not thinking about homework for the next day because you can do it tomorrow. So it really does make a difference in kids who don't have that sense of time and organization to bookend their classes. And it gives them time in between to think, to breathe, to throw a Frisbee around, to eat, to see their friends. And then they're much fresher for that second class. Again, it depends on their time of day. Some students are early morning kids and you might want to do an 8 and a 12, something like that. But it is good to have them far apart. And the other reason for our priority registration is to not have too many heavy reading courses in the same semester, because that might be overwhelming. You might ask to have a math and a history or a reading and a science, and then take something non-academic like an art or a music class that doesn't require as much reading to balance that out. So things like that are important. And as I mentioned, a reduced course load, 12 credits is accepted as a full-time course load, but you can go down to 9 credits and still be considered full-time with a medical disability or a letter from a doctor. My recommendation is it's very hard to start with that. But if you feel that that's necessary, start with 12 credits. And then if it becomes challenging, you can drop one during the semester. And it's more likely that you're not going to be told your child can't stay full-time, and you'll finish out the semester and then you can decide what to do. But it can also affect financial aid. So you definitely want to get a letter that says that you were given this accommodation of a reduced course load, and then you are able to get financial aid, because that you normally wouldn't get it unless it was full-time. And I mentioned the late class start and the foreign language substitution. So those are good ones to keep in mind. And when you're doing the new neuropsych for your child, you can ask about these. Would my child qualify for this? Okay. And then you want to determine what your priorities are. Every family has different priorities. And this is by no means the answer. This is just one family's. You'll notice there's a big hazard sign next to majors. That is because majors are not the reason to choose a college. If your child has a specific interest Yes, you want to make sure that the college has that major, but you also need to make sure that it fits them in every other way. And that is because they're only going to be in class 12 to 15 hours per week. The rest of the time is completely unstructured. So how are they going to manage their time? Is there enough support? You know, all the things that you need to think about. Is it the right environment? So these are just examples. How much support does your child need? How much does it cost to go there? And the cost of attendance is not the tuition that's posted. The cost of attendance is something that encompasses everything, including the books, after you've gotten your scholarship or merit or financial aid. And most colleges will give some merit money to most students. So just because it's showing that it's X amount of dollars does not mean that's the final answer. The class size is important. Can your child sit in a lecture hall of 200 students and learn? Or do you need a small class interactive class? And how far it is from home. Those are just some examples. Some parents care about the safety in the area. What's the environment like? Not that everybody doesn't care about that, but is that your priority? So think about 4 or 5 or so priorities that when you go from college to college or program to program, you want to see that each one has what you're looking for, or at least the majority. And the reason I say not to look at majors is most students, more than 50%, change their majors at least once. So if you find a school for engineering for your child and it just has engineering and math and physics, and your child decides, I don't like engineering anymore, you have to change colleges. But if you look for a college that might have an engineering major, but also has other majors in a wider range, at least your child can change majors without having to change the environment. And also, if you are looking at which of the colleges that have the best criminal justice program, or which of the colleges have the best this or that, again, the program may be good, but if your child isn't going to succeed there, or the professors are not as understanding about your child's issues, it doesn't matter how good the major is. What matters is your child succeeding and getting through the school and the program. So diversity, disability, or neurodiversity. Okay, so looking at this, we're going to have an awful lot of animals that have a disability. But not everybody can climb that tree, but not everybody can live in that fishbowl either. So what's going to be the right answer? Okay, we have to look at this, that it isn't fair for everyone to take the same exam. Okay, we need to meet the students where they are, and that's what you want to look for in college. And more colleges are developing programs or clubs or things for kids with neurodiversity, and they're embracing them and accepting them a lot more. And sometimes that might be what your child needs, is just a social environment that they have to go to. So what are some of those alternatives to college? If your child is not ready yet for college, what are some of the things you can do? Okay, there's a postgraduate year, and I'll explain them all in just a moment. Postgraduate year, where you would be on college, on a high school campus, like a boarding school. Independent life skills programs, where you're developing life skills. You may take a college course, you may not. You might just be developing your social skills, your independence, your ability to shop and cook for yourself and live by yourself and manage an apartment, all of those things. Transition programs, where you just need a little more time. They can be life skills, they can be an internship, they could be a travel program. It could be something that just gives you that sense of being independent. Internships specifically, and gap year programs, which are, gap year is a misnomer because it's not a gap in your education, it's just a different way of learning. And you may know that many of your children learn wherever they are. They don't have to be in a classroom to learn. They could learn in an environment if they're interested in something, and they'll look it up online and read about it, or watch a YouTube video. There's so many ways for them to learn now that if they're taking a gap year and they're going somewhere, they're going to learn something about where they are, and they'll also learn something about themselves. So here's a way to look at this. Who would be a good student for each of these? So for the PG and transition years, as I mentioned, it's a boarding school or it could be a standalone program. The typical student has poor executive functioning skills, weak academic skills, and is not independent as a learner. And it can be all of those or some of those. That would be a good student for that. The independent life skills program can be career focused or academically focused. They work on social communication, independent living skills, all the things you need to become an independent adult. And the typical student might not be able to get up in the morning, might not take care of themselves, might not be able to take their meds themselves. They don't communicate well. They might have poor executive functioning skills. They might need very strong academic tutoring. And I can't see if there's another one down there because it's not letting me. Oh, I'll go back. And the internship program. That's for someone, sorry, this keeps happening. That's for someone who needs to trust their instincts, needs to really improve their time management and organization, but they pretty much have the ability to go to college, but they don't really recognize the help they need. So this gives them the opportunity to recognize their responsibility to themselves. And one of my favorite stories is a student who had gone to an internship program, and she actually got fired from her first job, her first internship. And she came back, to the program, and they discussed why that happened and what she could do about it. And she started to recognize she couldn't blame her mom or her dad because they weren't there. She had to accept responsibility. So she called her parents and said to them, I just want to let you know that I'm sorry for always blaming you for everything that I didn't do, but I realize I got fired from this job. I realize that it's my responsibility, that I'm the one that's supposed to be taking care of these things. And the mom said it was worth every penny she spent just for that one phone call, because her daughter finally accepted responsibility. But sometimes it has to happen in a place where you're not at home, because you're always going to fall back into patterns no matter what. So again, someone who needs direction with their life, maybe doesn't know what they want to do in life, they might do an internship in a field that interests them, and they might decide if they like it or not like it. So these are some examples of things you can do if you're not ready for college. You can also take a gap year. And as I mentioned earlier, it's really a year of growth, but it's also a year of education. You can travel, you can do an internship. There are community service programs that are local to your community and also where you can go away and you can have a job. And all of these help to develop independence. They develop leadership. The students gain self-confidence. They might even develop some social skills. Emotionally, they're going to get more mature and they're going to gain some independence. And again, every student is different. It's not always going to be to the same level, but everybody will gain something. Think about all the different ways you can visualize your child succeeding. Okay, they're in high school now. They could go for a gap year, a life skills program, a PG year. And I can't read my last one because my screen is not letting me. What do I have down there? The last one, Judy? The screen is not letting me read below here. Oh, there we go. Transition program. I got it now. So you could do any of those. And then the gap year might lead right to college. The life skills program might lead to college or employment. If you're in a postgraduate year, you might need more time. You might take a gap year or a life skills program and then go on to college or right to a job. So you can see that all of these things lead to a level of independence, but there are many steps along the way, and not everyone's going to have the same level of steps. So when we talk about college, there are many different colleges and many different levels of support. And I like to classify them as ADA compliant. They comply with the law and nothing else. Moderate support services, which is where, fortunately, the majority of colleges fall. Comprehensive support programs, which are typically fee-based. And social support programs, which are also fee-based and more focused on the social aspects, and making sure that outside the classroom, students are involved in connecting with people. So this is a chart, and I can send this chart to everyone. I don't know if you'll be getting a copy of this, but you certainly can download it, and I can send you a copy directly. The first column here of basic ADA compliance. This is basically where you don't want to send your child. By law, every college has to provide accommodations. However, they don't really have to do much more than giving them the very basics. So what that means is they might not know a lot about learning support, but by law, they have to give you extra time if you qualify for it. So let's say your child's in a classroom and they're entitled to extra time. They're taking their test. The class is over and the teacher has another class, or another class is coming in with a different teacher. You have to leave the classroom. Your child has to leave the classroom, go to maybe the professor's office to finish the test. And the professor is having office hours. So the door is opening and closing, the phone is ringing, but your child got his extra time. There's no requirement for a distraction-reduced setting. But the good news is most colleges do provide that. So most colleges fall into the moderate category. They have some kind of professional with a degree. They might help advocate for the student. The student still needs to seek out the support and advocate for themselves in most cases, but at least they have support. They might have peer tutors or professional tutors. Professional tutors are always better. They might have support groups or workshops. They might have a coaching model or a mentoring model. They might even have some specialized summer programs for students who either are going to that college in the fall or who just want the taste of college, but also can get the support they need. And they offer coaching, organizational study skills, assistance. They might have coaches that are students that are trained. They might have professionals. These are questions that you need to ask. Then we go to the programs, which are fee-based. So colleges have services or a program. So if you ask a college, tell me about your college support program, if they don't have a program, they're really going to jump and say, we don't have a program. So they have services. They don't want to be known as having more than they have. So they don't want to just mislead you. But if they have a comprehensive program, it's a separate program. It's part of the college community. They're all students in the community, but they're with people who are professionals that are full-time director that has a background in special education, in psychology, and learning differences, in autism. They have several staff members who also are professionals. They might even be involved in the admissions process in a way, not that they would admit or not admit, but they might be asked, if we want to accept this student, do you have the resources to take care of the support they need? Because you don't want to be sending your child to a school where they won't get that. They'll have those environments. They might have even trained proctors. All their tutors will be professional. They'll have advocacy and support groups and helping students learn how to study, how to take tests. They usually have a special summer orientation program. So some colleges have a separate week. Some of them have students come on campus 2 days early, where they get to move into their dorm room early and they have a chance to get acclimated before the rest of the students come on. And they often have coaching where you can meet 3-5 hours a week. Sometimes it's fee-based that you pay by the hour. And some of them even have now college trips where they might go on spring break or in their winter break together on a study abroad program with supervision, which is really nice because you don't want to just send your child off to college and then they can then think they can go off to Spain for a week when they've never really been away from home. The social support is really for students with autism or any other kind of social communication disorders, including kids with ADHD who have social anxiety. What they do is they might have separate housing. If there are sensory issues, they'll be very cautious. They might give the student a private room or match them with students who have similar issues. They'll do a lot of social programming. So for example, most kids can find a friend and say, let's go out Friday night. But students who are on the spectrum aren't necessarily going to do that. But if someone invites them, they might go. So they'll have social activities. They'll say on Friday night, if you want to come bowling with us or come to the campfire, we're all leaving at 6 o'clock. We're going to meet here and go together. Okay, that's doable. That's a program that, oh, I'd love to do that. And I don't have to think about who I'm going to go with because there's already a group going and I can join. And that's really important because a lot of times students who don't have that outlet, they end up isolating for the weekend in their dorm and they only come out for classes. And that really can lead to some real, depression and anxiety for the student because no one's there. Thinking about, I hear parents say, well, he spends his time in his room all the time. But when he's in his bedroom, he knows you're on the other side of the door. But when he's in college, there's no one on the other side. And if nobody knocks on the door, that student doesn't know what to do. And you don't want to put your child in that situation. So it's very important to look for colleges that have those supports. And fortunately, there are more and more of them every day. I can't even keep up with how many are providing the social support. Here are some colleges, just a random sampling that are fairly local of colleges that offer moderate support, colleges that have comprehensive programs, and colleges that have social support programs. You'll see that some of them overlap. Okay, you can see, where do I have? Mercyhurst is on the comprehensive and the social. They have a comprehensive program for kids with learning disabilities, with ADHD, and they have a separate program for students who have autism. And you'll see that throughout a lot of colleges that they overlap with that. But this is just a general, there are many, many more colleges. I just wanted to show you that the academic rigor of the school doesn't matter. The size of the school doesn't matter. You have large schools with excellent support and small schools that aren't very supportive. And you have very selective colleges that have excellent support and some very, sort of less academic environments that don't have good support. So it's really a mix and you have to really focus on what's right for your child. Does anybody want to take a guess in the chat how many colleges in the country are exclusively for students with learning challenges? So anybody want to take a guess in the chat? Let me see if I can find. We have 10 for one person. We have 2 from another person. Anyone else? Okay. So the answer is we have Beacon College in Leesburg, Florida. There is Landmark College in Putney, Vermont. And that's it. There are only 2 colleges in the country that are exclusively for students who learn differently. So when a family comes to me and says, we don't want an LG college, we want a regular college, I always love saying, that's okay, good, we eliminated 2. We still have 2,000 more to go. And they really don't understand that. There are no colleges, except for these 2, that ever have more than 30% of the students using their support services. And that's because that's the general population. The general population is 15 to 20% of students who have any kind of learning challenges. So that's what you find in college. So there are no colleges that are flooded with kids with learning differences because the colleges don't accept that many students. If they have a program, for example, there's a limit. And if they have services, they might fluctuate. One year they might have 35%, maybe they'll have 25%, but they're never going to have more than that. So you're in a mainstream college, no matter where you go. The support might be good, the support might not be good. It all depends. Okay, so let me see if I can get the next slide. So the last thing I want to say, and then I'll take questions, is that the way to see student success is thinking about the accommodations and the services you can get. It's very important to meet with the school or the program before you're accepted, or at least before you accept. So let's say your child's been accepted to college A, and you say, okay, before we accept, we want to make sure that you can meet the needs of my child. I want to sit down and go over our accommodations with you. Some colleges will not allow you to do that. And you might want to think about whether that's a good college for you or not, if they're not willing to do that. Most of the colleges that are really supportive, while you're visiting, you can ask those questions, and they'll always say, on a case-by-case basis, we offer this. Before you go, once you've accepted, you want to make an appointment in the summer right away to get those accommodations. You want to sit down with the learning specialist, with the neuropsych report, and with your child, and have a conversation. They usually ask for the student to be there, and talk about what your child needs. They will put together an accommodations list. And then you want to have an appointment in the fall already set up for your child, so that this way your child has met this person at least twice and they're developing a relationship, because that's a key piece of going for the support. And so you want to have that fall appointment set up. It could be during orientation. You can go a day early before orientation or a day after, and meet and get the letter that your child either gets the letter or it gets emailed to the professor that has their accommodations on it. And then you get a commitment from your child that starting that day, your child's going to go weekly to meet with this learning specialist, at least for the first semester. That's how you can achieve success. There's no guarantee, because your child has to buy into it, but that's what I usually will say to parents. Have your child make a commitment for one semester. They will go every week, whether they need to or not. And once it becomes a habit and they realize how helpful it is, they usually continue. And then here are some resources that can help you in terms of looking at finding colleges. There's some online resources and some written books that have them. And these are clickable. So if you do get the PowerPoint, you can click on them and go to them. And that's all I have. And thank you very much for coming to listen. And now I would love to take questions. Do you have any? Yes.
So Judith, I noticed you really didn't talk much about community colleges, and I don't know if that was because the format of this particular presentation, or if there's a particular reason for that.
That's a very good question. I don't feel that community college is a good option for students with learning challenges for a couple of reasons. There are reasons to go, but if you're looking to go to see if your child can do college or as a stepping point towards college, it's less supportive than a four-year college with support in place. And it's also frustrating if your child is in a place where the professor is not accessible, and oftentimes community college professors are part-time. They can't always find their professors. It's not as easy as on a four-year campus where you have an advocate who can help you. If the reason, and it's also less growth if you're looking for independence, because your child is living at home. So you're getting the college education, but you're not getting the independence. However, I will say that if your child is not mature enough to leave home yet, then if you consider it a 13th year and you're going to college as a plan to continue high school for another year before your child is ready to launch, that's a valid reason. But they're not necessarily going to be any more or less successful in that college than they are in high school. And they're not going to get more support. So the reason I caution you is that I've had many students come back to me 3, 4, or 5 years after flunking out of community college, thinking that they just weren't smart. Because if I can't make it a community college, there's no way I can make it at a 4-year college. And they flunked out. What they didn't realize is they could have made it at a 4-year college if they were in the right place with the right support. So that's why I'm very cautious about it. But there are valid reasons. My nephew, when he graduated high school, he was 17, he was immature, he was small, he had severe ADHD. He absolutely wasn't ready to even leave high school. And so that's what he did. He went to his local community college, and that's what he needed to become old enough to even think about leaving home.
Because because my thought, I mean, right or wrong, is trying to see if they could just even handle the academics or to get through my son through a few courses to then maybe go on to apply the next year for a 4-year college.
Well, see, that may not happen because he's probably not going to be successful unless you put a lot of supports in place externally. So you'll have to provide a couple of tutors, maybe an ADHD coach, and other supports in place to help him be successful. Because it's not, trying community college in itself is sort of setting them up, because they're not going to have the support they would have if they went to a comprehensive program where they met with someone 3 or 4 times a week and they had a tutor for every subject, and all of that was in place. So there are places where those things are going to help your child even more.
I would like to jump in and say, Megan, TCC, I have heard many of our CBA kids go to Tidewater Community College. That's sort of where they transition to. And then they can do 2 years at TCC, and it's an automatic transfer to finish at ODU.
Mm-hmm.
And what I have heard from some other folks is that their supports are actually adequate. Now, obviously, this is about the level of need
Right.
of the student, right? That's engaging here. But, you know, there are lots of parents here who have had the experience. So if it's helpful, Megan, you know, happy to connect you with some of those folks. Nevin is a pretty academically capable student.
Okay.
Right. Well,
And that's a different, you're absolutely right, Judy. And I should have included
no-
that, because I do know that the students do go there. If your child is academically capable of doing the work and needs the social emotional support at home, that's different. They need the
but-
academic support.
mhm.
That can be a problem.
But this is something for me to think about as far as just needing other services that another program could support, you know, than what a community college might offer.
And
So
some of
just
those-
some things to think of.
Yeah, and some of those independent life skills programs have college as a component where the students take 1 or 2 classes.
Mm.
And as well as learning the life skills, they're learning how to be a college student.
Okay.
So that's another option too. Other questions?
We have a couple folks on this call who's Mary and Greg, I'm going to call you out here.
Yeah, I was about to jump in.
Oh, well, good. I mean, because this is a whole other, their son has been accepted, early acceptance.
Yes.
At Christopher Newport. He actually has attended Virginia Wesleyan in their advanced scholars program
Oh, good.
for a bit. So yeah, Mary, I'm gonna
Now, let me ask you a question. Early decision?
early
Yes.
Commitment?
decision.
Okay.
He's locked in. So
Okay.
that was nice. So first I was going to ask, do you have any experience with CNU? I know a lot of people love it. I also had one of my best friends, her daughter went. She had some anxiety issues. And so I know that there are 2 sides to that. But do you personally have any experience? And then I'll also speaking about the Virginia Wesleyan, I think we've learned a lot. And I think one of the things we've learned, and Harrison's very self-reflective. He knows that he needs to do things better. He feels confident that being in an environment where it's more structured, he's around his peers all the time, is going to create an environment where he gets the support he needs. And that's priceless. I would rather he learn that now than next fall. So I guess back to I feel like he's going to need the person to kind of nudge him, not babysit him, but just give him some guidance. And what are your experiences related to that for CNU, if you have any to speak to?
I do. And let me ask you first, have you met with the Learning Center and talked to them about what they can offer?
No, we have not.
Okay. So I would recommend hiring outside support for your son.
Yeah.
Because CNU used to have an excellent executive function coaching program. And when that person left, they didn't hire new people. And I know that I found a coach in the area who came on campus and worked with the students. So I don't have experience in the last 2 or 3 years, so things could have changed. But I know I visited, when was I there? 3 years ago, I visited on my way home and was not impressed with what was available. But again, that doesn't mean the teachers aren't caring and all of that. It just wasn't extensive enough to say that there would be someone that can meet with your
Right.
son on a regular basis.
And that was my friend's experience, I think, and that's exactly the time frame. And I will say he's also been meeting with a tutor who's a teacher at my daughter's former school on math. So I think that if the person earns his respect, they don't belittle him. He'll take their advice. So any recommendations you have?
Well, what I would say is to see if you can ask the disability services coordinator if there's anyone, maybe a graduate student that's a psychology student or education student that you could hire, that could be a mentor that could meet with him, or even someone, maybe they have, a psychology graduate student that's studying, working with special ed or learning disabilities or anything like that. Connect him with somebody that can be a mentor, that he
Okay,
has a go-to person. You need a go-to person, because when you feel overwhelmed, you don't want to go back to your parents because you feel like you're going to show a sense of failure. And then you keep it in and you don't have somebody to go to. You need to have a go-to person. So if the disabilities office doesn't have that, which I don't, like I said, in my experience, they don't.
Yeah.
But everything can change. So find somebody that can do that. Sometimes it's a professor. Sometimes there are professors who are willing to say, I'd love to take this student under my wing. He's great in my area. I'd love to have him come in and do work with me, or I can tutor him. So just look for the person that he feels comfortable with.
Perfect.
To do that. But
Thank you.
again, if you need a coach, I'll just tell you, if you need an outside coach, there's an organization, JST Coach, I think it's .com, J Sam Tom, Jody Sleeper Triplet. She has coaches that she trains for her organization all over the country. And that's how I found this other person who came. When I called her for my 2 students who were at CNU, she said, oh, I'm already going to campus. I've already got 3 other students there because this other person left. So it was easy for her, but she didn't stay for very long. It wasn't a thing she was going to do forever. So, you can find someone in the community, but this would be a certified coach who knows how to do EF coaching.
Okay. Oh, great. And I'll let Greg jump in. He signed Harrison up for your course.
Oh, great. For this summer?
Yes.
Great. Okay, good. Well, we're going to do a lot of transition work, so that'll be helpful. We have a 4-day course in case anyone's interested. I'll be teaching in, I think, the end of July, beginning of August, in transitioning to college and how to plan your schedule and your week and how to manage the first semester, how to be an advocate for yourself, how to set things up for yourself to be successful. So I'm glad to hear that. That's great.
Mary, did you know Michelle Bandy?
Yes.
Christopher is at Christopher Newport.
Oh, good.
So, if you want to reach out to her, I'm sure she is a wealth of information regularly. And cognitively, they have a pretty similar profile.
Okay, good.
Yeah.
Okay, other questions? I thought I saw some in the chat. No?
Everyone wants to make sure that they have your slides.
Okay, yes. That's no problem.
What's in the chat.
I'm happy to share.
Lori gets the prize. We owe her something because she did in fact guess correctly how many colleges are specifically designed for kids with learning differences, and it is pretty startling that it is 2, but we know that this is a pretty narrow field, right? Quite a unique niche. Although it's, when you listen to Judy's numbers, when you're talking about 15 to 20% of the population who sort of fall into this area where they would benefit from support, I do feel like, and Judy, you reflected this as well, that universities are beginning to evolve, partly out of necessity.
Right.
But it's obviously a fine art here of determining the balance, right, between the social and the academic and the independence and support. And so there's multiple tensions here to navigate. And so I always feel this information is so helpful to families. So thank you so much for doing this, Judy.
Oh, you're welcome.
Judy also has, you didn't pitch your Learning RX website.
Oh, my College Web LD. We actually, I have a website. Right now we have a technical problem with it where we cannot access it.
Oh,
And I'm working on it. I'm trying to get developers to fix it. So I didn't recommend it because right now it's down, but we have a website. It's called collegewebld.com. I have over 400 colleges on there with lots of information about the type of support and the levels of support that you can access for free now. So I did want to say, someone asked about our 4-day course for students. Two things. One is our website is basseducationalservices.com, and that will be in the slides. And I also wanted to mention, if any of you are sophomore parents rising to juniors, I'm teaching a parent course, and one of your fellow parents is in my course, so I'll let that person share if she would like to, that I'm teaching it again in September, and it's an 8-week course that walks you through the whole process of how to plan for college for your child and what to do, how to research, how to plan, prepare them for it. So if anybody's interested, or if you know anyone else that's interested, I'm going to be starting to advertise that in June or July, and I'll be teaching that once. What I like about it is actually it's once a week, an hour, a second hour a week. Oh, Lori mentioned it. She said she loves it. She's in the course. Good. It's once a week lecture and discussion, once a week a drop-in session for any questions, and then a 30-minute one-on-one session with me to talk about your child, whatever issues you want to talk about. And the class, the slides are, the PowerPoint is copied, so you have access to that as well. And there's homework and worksheets and things, but it's all beneficial to you to know how to walk your child through this process. So I can plug that even if I don't have my College Web LD site. But thank you, Lori, for that.
well, they say a great meeting is one that ends right on time, and here we are. So Judy, thank you so much for obviously a lot of information in a compressed period of time,
Yes.
but also for the many other opportunities that you are making available through your practice and just your commitment to our kids.
Absolutely. I'm happy to help in whatever way I can. And I will be there on Saturday if anybody wants to say hello. And I don't know, Judy can point me out. But if anybody's going to be there, I'd be happy to meet you in person.
Well, so Saturday is our annual ADHD symposium. Yes, I will put in a pitch for that also. Dr. Edward Hallowell, Ned Hallowell, who is just, Judy was just saying one of her colleagues is jealous that she's getting to come up here and hear Ned. I have been listening to him probably for 20 years at different events, and every time you hear him, he is entertaining, he is informative, he just puts a spin on ADHD that is really heartwarming. So we hope to see you there. Okay.
All right. Thank you.
Thanks.
All right. Bye-bye.
Bye.